Back everyone, we're going to be doing another camera comparison today, and this time it's going to be between the iPhone SE 2020, as you guys already know, and the iPhone 8 Plus. Now the 8 Plus is pretty much like, it's not a successor to any way or a predecessor to the iPhone SE 2020, but really when the iPhone SE 2020 came out, it was pretty much replacing the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, so in a way it was a successor, but we are expecting to see an iPhone 8 Plus successor in the form of an SE Plus, so whenever that comes out, best believe I'm also going to be reviewing that. But in terms of the camera quality and everything, we're gonna kind of see, which one looks better, which one appears to be better, whatever. Now, I'll tell you a little bit of the, details of the specific comparison, but I'll tell you the specs of both cameras first. The iPhone SE 2020 has a single camera setup. It's a 12 megapixel camera, and you have things like portrait mode on it, which are really nice, but you don't have any other, camera sensors on it. You only have a single camera sensor. You can do 4K at 60, which is really cool, but other than that, you're pretty much limited on that single camera setup. Even if the quality is great, you never know, at least you have an additional camera set up on something like an iPhone 8 Plus, and on the 8 Plus you have that 12 megapixel sensor, but you also have an additional 12 megapixel telephoto lens, which in my opinion is extremely cool. And I've always said, I would rather have more camera sensors than, less camera sensors. So between both phones, you definitely have, I think, more, camera features on something like an iPhone 8 Plus, but that doesn't always come down to quality. So I tested both cameras, you'll go ahead and see the camera quality. And the way I tested these photos was I let one camera, I took a picture of one specific phone first, took the photo, then I took the other phone, and literally right after I took the photo, and I did that with like 6-7 phones in a row, so within like a minute I took the photos on all those phones. Another thing, that the cameras autofocus completely. I didn't go and tap to focus on any of them, so kind of keep that in mind, you know what I mean? So as I'm going through when I'm talking about it, keep in mind that I didn't, tap to focus on any of these. I autofocused on all of them. So now that we have all that stuff out of the way, let's go and look at the first photo. And the iPhone SE 2020 photos will be on the right, the iPhone 8 Plus photos will be on the left. Now between both, you probably can't tell, so huge differences, but honestly there are already some. With the iPhone SE2, or yeah, SE2, you can see that the photo on the left kind of looks a little bit more brighter in a way. On the 8 Plus, it kind of looks a little bit, maybe a little bit darker. But if we start zooming in, this is maybe we'll start to see some of those differences. And actually, surprisingly, if you kind of look here, the iPhone SE2 looks to me that it kind of is a little bit washed out in a way. So on the left side, you can see that, it did brighten up that photo. There seems to be more noise in this photo for some reason, and that might have to do with a lot of the overexposing that's going on. If we look at the curtain in a way, you can see that, yeah, the SE2 did a good job of brightening up that photo, but at the cost of making a little bit more noise coming on this photo too. And if you look at something like the edge of this specific thing, the curtain kind of moved a little bit, but almost the exact same thing. I sense there's more noise in this specific photo, a lot more noise than on the iPhone 8 Plus. So, and I already kind of skipped to the next photo, but ultimately what I can tell you about this first photo, I think, the SE2 did a really good job at brightening up that photo. And if you're looking at it from a bird's eye view like this, I think it does kind of look better on the iPhone SE2. But once you start zooming in, that's when you start seeing some of the bigger differences. So in terms of that, I think that really pretty much covers it up for the first photo. This next photo, as you guys kind of saw briefly, you can see that there's a Rubik's Cube in the center, and the rest, it kind of, showcases some things here and there. Now, between both, the coloring, I think looks pretty good on both phones, from the, again, like the bird's eye view. You get to see, my little background on my feet and everything. And honestly, bro, like my toes be looking really good and nobody even commented on it. But besides that, if you kind of zoom into like the actual Rubik's Cube itself, again, you don't really see too many differences. But like I stated before, the photo and the colors seem to be popping a little bit more on the SE2 than on the iPhone 8 Plus. It looks a little bit dull and dark here. Not even that much though, but if you look in the background, like if I go and zoom into this specific area right here, again, you can see that in a way, actually, I think there seems to be a little bit more noise coming on the iPhone 8 Plus photo. If you look at the edge right here, look how kind of washed out it looks. On the iPhone SE2, it looks a lot more in focus. And looking at the dark background on the little background right here, again, a lot more noise here and a lot less noise here. There's still noise on both photos, but I think there's substantially a lot less noise on this specific photo. And even looking at the background of this photo, if you look at like this specific pinpoint right here, you can kind of see that, this is actually kind of surprising again. This seems to be, it might not look like anything at first, but if you kind of look a little bit more washed out here and a little bit more noise going on versus something like the iPhone SE2, it kind of did a better job at kind of, sharpening those specific layouts. But again, nobody's going to be zooming in that much. So for this photo, again, I'd probably give it to the SE2. Now in this photo, it's just of a camera lens, and honestly, straight from the go again, I think you can honestly see that the SE2 photo might look a little bit better than the iPhone 8 Plus photo. And again, once you start zooming in, you'll see a couple new differences and everything like that. The SE2 did a really good job at kind of brightening up that photo, like I stated, and there seems to be, not as much noise as something like the iPhone SE2 photos from before. But even looking at this one, like if you look at this specific edge right here, will you notice that big of a difference? Man, probably not, if I'm being honest. This kind of photo looks a little bit darker, so if you kind of prefer sharper, darker photos, this might be the way to go. These are definitely darker, I don't know about sharper, but this one looks pretty good too, you know what I mean? You can still see, I think if you kind of zoom in, you can see probably a lot more dust particles on this specific photo than this one. But another interesting thing, if you look onto the actual little like things right here, look in a way the colors are a lot more popping, the whites are a little bit more popping, and nobody's ever going to zoom into a photo this much. But again, it's kind of good to see, what little advantages you get from going to one camera to the other. So for sure, in terms of quality, I give this one to the iPhone SE2 as well. And this is another photo, that kind of showcases the brightening of the photos that the SE2 and the newer technology within the A13 chip do. If you go and zoom into the middle of this, and I purposely put this here for this specific lighting, you might not be able to tell crazy differences, but like I've stated before, you kind of are able to see, the photo on the iPhone SE2 does look a little bit brighter. And if I zoom into this specific area right here, you kind of see that, yeah, that seems to be the case. And when interesting enough, again, there seems to be a little bit more noise going on the SE2 photo than on the A Plus photo. Is it a big deal? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how you look at it. It depends how much you're zooming in. But most people are probably going to look if you're looking at it like this. So between these two, again, I don't really see too many differences. But, if you like a sharper photo, the A Plus might be the way to go. But the brighter photo and the darker photo, A Plus, but the brighter photo is for the SE2 for sure. Now this is another one, I just put my ukulele on the carpet, nobody really cares. And another thing you can see right here on the edge of the ukulele, that it is a little bit brighter on the SE2, and again, these were taken at the exact same time, exact same location. The darkening of the photo and the wood stain actually looks a lot better on the SE2 as well. If you go ahead and look, I mean, this definitely looks, they kind of look the same if you kind of look at them and look away, but this one looks a lot more, I think, woody in a way, if that makes any sense. So I actually do prefer this photo than this photo in a lot of ways. And if I go and zoom into like this specific area, yeah, there's really not too many, differences here. If I zoom into the bottom carpet area, let's see if there's any differences, and I don't really think there are, but either or, both these look pretty good at the end of the day, so I probably give the edge to the SE2 still. This is an outdoor photo, and this is just some leaf, and honestly, I think the SE2 tried to do a little bit over brightening in a way, and I actually do kind of like this photo on the A Plus a little bit more than the SE2 photo. And if I go ahead and zoom in, you might be able to tell, maybe like, in a way, let's go and zoom into like the specific tip of this specific thing and seeing if there's any differences. And if you can kind of tell, it's kind of hard to see, but if you look at like this area, and if you look at kind of the edge of this, on the iPhone 8 Plus, it kind of looks a little bit more noisy, a little bit more like washed out. The background seems to be about the same blurriness on both, but the SE2 did a really good job at kind of, distinguishing the background and the object, with the leaf. And on this one, this specific part looks a little bit more in focus, and this one looks a little bit more like out of focus and more noised up. So between both, I mean, definitely they both look the same. From bird's eye view, I'd probably give it to the iPhone 8 Plus, but once you start zooming in, that's when the bigger difference is, and I think the iPhone SE2 probably wins in that area. And even if you look at this specific leaf right here, it actually looks a little bit more blurred out on the iPhone 8 Plus than on the SE2, which is kind of surprising. So that's kind of one for maybe the 8 Plus there. And this is very interesting because it shows you the two different coloring ways that both phones kind of operate with. So if you look at both phones, you might think one wins over the other one, but it really just depends which one you like. So it really just depends which one you like. Do you like this specific looking photo? Or do you like this specific looking photo? If I go ahead and zoom in, there might be some differences you might be able to tell, but it really just depends on which color profile do you like. Me personally, maybe I'll like this one a little bit more, but this one seems to be a little bit more accurate and a little bit less filtered. So it really just depends on which one you like. Me personally, I honestly don't even have a preference really, so they're both kind of tied here. I don't really know which one is the winner here. Now this is another thing where honestly, if you looked before, with the filtering, it looked kind of like it was like too much on this photo. But now if you look at this one, it seems like the filtering are going on the 8 Plus, and it looks like they flipped. So honestly, again, I don't know what to make of it. If I go ahead and zoom into like the bottom portion right here, you can kind of see that on the 8 Plus it seems to be a little bit more blurred out. But again, if you kind of look at the edge that the iPhone 8 Plus is doing, it looks to be, to me at least, a lot more sharper on the iPhone SE2. The photos do look sharper, and I've been going back and forth. I don't know which one is like more consistently sharper, but when it comes to the edges and edge detection, it definitely goes for the iPhone SE2. But I think the overall photo quality is almost the same. It just goes hand in hand, you know what I mean? If you look at the background, you can see more of the leaves on the SE2, which is something you might like. And honestly, if you looked at both photos, you might think they were on two different times of the day, but they're not, exactly the same time almost. And this is just an example of portrait mode on both. And I think both of them I had troubles, taking this photo because, for some reason it doesn't distinguish animals and all that stuff. But if you look inside, you can kind of see that honestly, maybe the SE2 has the advantage. It kind of brightened up that photo, which looks pretty good on the SE2. And it doesn't look dull or anything on the iPhone 8 Plus, but it could have looked better. If you think I kind of look at the edge, this is something that I always look at. You kind of maybe be able to see that there might be a little bit more fuzziness and a little bit of noise on the iPhone SE2, or on the iPhone 8 Plus, but they're both pretty close at the end of the day. So in terms of portrait mode, I don't really think there's a clear winner. Maybe the SE2, because it is the brighter photo, but again, they're almost hand in hand. Now, I did take a video, and we'll go ahead and show you that right now. And between both, I really didn't notice too many crazy differences. But one thing to keep in mind, like I've stated before, if you looked at that beginning, when I showed the two pieces of wood or whatever the little thing was, the fence, you kind of see that on both, there's two different color profiles. One interpreted the brown one way, and the other interpreted the brown another way. And you can see that same thing almost with every single color between both phones. And I don't really notice one having the bigger advantage. But at the end of the day, the 8 Plus does have that extra telephoto lens, so that might be a big advantage for that. And, between videos, I didn't really see too big of a difference. Maybe you guys did. But when it came down to the photos, I think ultimately the iPhone SE2 is probably the better camera, in terms of the quality, but you do have that additional telephoto lens on the 8 Plus that makes it kind of hard to say like the 8 Plus, is the way worse camera and the SE2 is the better one, and vice versa. I think there's a lot of pros and cons for both, and I think when it comes down to the quality, maybe the SE2 wins. But if you really need that telephoto lens, the 8 Plus is probably the better way to go. Between both though, I honestly think the SE2 is probably the better, every single character of the phone. I think when it comes down to the camera, I think the SE2 is safe to say that it is the better camera than the iPhone 8 Plus, even though it doesn't have that telephoto lens. But I would have always liked to have that telephoto lens on that camera, but it is what it is. That's kind of how it ended off. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys to check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.